Ready to go?
Yep.
Hi everybody, my name's Jeanette. I'm going to introduce you to the Lower Manhattan walking tour, a little history of New York City, little pieces at a time. First of all, I want to ask anybody who thinks New York City is the greatest city in the world. Hopefully all of you. I certainly do. New York City, not to brag, but New York City boasts the introduction of American baseball, the forefather of American pizza, and randomly, the inventor of toilet paper, but God bless him, we couldn't deal without it, right? So New York City also has dozens of architectural marvels. The Brooklyn Bridge is one of them, Statue of Liberty certainly is another, Empire State Building, I'm sure you can name at least 4 or 5 more. New York City is actually the #1 city used in pictures of skylines around the world, so that's a pretty cool fact. And it's 24/7. Not only is New York City the only city where you can ride the subway 24 hours a day, it's also, I mean, where else can you get like a 12-course meal at 10 p.m., go hit the bars until 4 in the morning, and then go to the Apple store and buy yourself an iPad a couple hours before dawn, right? Whether or not you agree with me about New York City being the best in the world, I hope that by the end of this tour you will at least cede to that opinion. And if you don't, please don't tell me, because I'm a New Yorker, and I don't know if you've heard this, but we kind of have sore egos. Anyway, so a little bit about my beloved town. New York City is the biggest city in America. It has a population of about 8.2 million people, and that's spread over 5 boroughs, of course. Our 5 boroughs are Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, the Bronx, and of course, Manhattan. It is the most densely populated city in America. In fact, if it was its own independent country, it would be the most densely populated city in the entire, or the second most densely populated city in the entire world, second only to Monaco. So that's pretty intense. How did it get so big? Well, location, location, location. To the south over here, we have one of the most wonderful natural harbors in the world. To the east, we of course have the Atlantic Ocean. To the north, we have the Hudson River, access to rich hunting grounds. And to the west, of course, we have an entire continent full of rich resources. And I guess no better place to start that is in Lower Manhattan. Going all the way back in time to the 1600s, to the founding of what was, before even New York, New Amsterdam. And right behind us, sitting on this very spot, used to be Fort Amsterdam, a big fort that the Dutch built to protect their thriving fur trading colony. So there were a lot of beaver on the Hudson River back in the day. And back in the day, it was really in vogue to have a really fancy beaver fur hat. This was kind of like the Ferrari of the 1600s. So the Dutch East Indies Company, they set up a thriving fur trading colony. And to protect their thriving fur trading colony, they built themselves a lovely fort on this very site. We'll talk about how they lost Fort Amsterdam in a little bit. What I want to talk about right now is this beautiful building sitting on top of what used to be Fort Amsterdam. Behind me is a beautiful building sitting on top of what used to be Fort Amsterdam. It is now the Alexander Hamilton U.S. Customs House. So the U.S. Customs House actually used to be located on Wall Street for a couple years until they relocated themselves down here in 1907. In the 1970s, they actually relocated their offices into the World Trade Center in Tower number 6. And now they're located a little north of City Hall in the Jacob Javits Center. So the U.S. Customs House, this is basically how America made its money before we had income tax and property tax. Right over here was the river. We had about 50 wharves on the Hudson River and 60 wharves on the East River. And whenever we had goods coming into the country or out of the country, we taxed them. We taxed them like crazy. The government officials sat in this building, and that is how our country made a lot of its money. Today, this houses part of the Smithsonian Institute, the Museum of the American Indian. They moved here in 1994. But why I want to talk about it is it's one of the most beautiful buildings in New York City. So between, let's say, 1900 and 1904, we have this really random architectural movement in New York City called the City Beautiful movement. It's one of my favorites. Not only because it only existed for 4 years, but the idea behind it was if we made beautiful buildings in New York City, people would be happier and there would be less crime. Works for me, right? Well, it didn't work. Unfortunately, people still committed crime, and so they killed that movement in the bud. But for a short period of time, we have some really stunning buildings in New York City, and this is one of them. So the Alexander Hamilton Customs House was actually built between 1902 and 1907 by the same man that did the Lincoln Memorial, Cass Gilbert. And in front of it, we have sculptures that were done by a man named Daniel Chester French. He's the guy that did the Lincoln Memorial. In any case, it's called Four Continents, and it represents the four superpowers of the world in that time, going, let's see if I can reverse this, going right to left. We have, I'm gonna cheat. We have Africa, we have Europe, we have America, and then we have Asia. And there's a lot of symbols within that. Personally, my favorite, of course, is America. She has some lovely corn draped across her lap, nothing more American than corn, right? And there's also a wheel of progress at her feet, which is something I think we tend not to talk about any longer. Above are 12 sculptures of the great seafaring nations of the, I guess, early 20th century, and also a winged sculpture of war and peace. So a lot going on in this building, but I think it's one of the most stunning in New York City today, especially great representation of the New York City beautiful. Ooh, one more tidbit I will add. Hollywood loves to use this building as museums in New York City. I think it was used in Ghostbusters 2. It was also used in a lot of Friends episodes, probably more that I can't think of as well, but you might recognize it in film and TV. Great. Should we pause or should we?